What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. A while back Riot Meddler had been discussing a couple of champion concepts in a Q&A that he did on the official Riot forums, and what's interesting is that pretty much all of the concepts at the time were something that were pretty much impossible due to the way that champion development cycles work, since there were similar champions coming out at the same time that were a separate project from the concepts that were mentioned. But since it's been such a long time since that Q&A, the potential for the concepts that Meddler brought up is pretty much more than ever now for those champions to become a reality, and I love taking a look at these champion concepts and showing off the types of things that could exist in the future. And today's champion concept is that of the Shapeshifter. And if you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you don't, hit that dislike. And let's get started. Now, when this champion was initially talked about a while back, a lot of the people thought that Riot Meddler was actually referring to Gnar, because of the whole shapeshifter thing kind of going on, but later it was confirmed by Riot that this was a shapeshifter that was different to Gnar, and as such is likely a concept that is potentially still in development. Now, because of Gnar and because of the way that champion release cycles work in League of Legends, as I mentioned previously, it's pretty much out of the question that Riot would release a shapeshifter type of champion, or honestly even start working on one, so soon after the release of a totally different shapeshifter champion, in this case Gnar. So it's the case that Riot wouldn't even think about this champion concept at all until probably about a year and a half after Gnar's release. But well, that time has passed, and this champion concept now has a lot of potential to be released in the future, since there's now room in the development cycle for a type of champion like this to be released. And I wouldn't be surprised if once again this type of champion comes out later in the year, or potentially maybe sometime next year. The character in question was described as someone who was a kind of a creature or a shapeshifter. The original design was a champion who was a swarm of insects that would morph around on different types of targets, and it's an idea that the champion design team has messed around with quite a bit and tested a couple variations, but eventually couldn't really find the right fit for the gameplay. This swarm would shapeshift into different types of swarms, probably to interact with allies and opponents and all that good stuff. And the gameplay design was that of a champion who would literally attach themselves to the ally, and then soak up damage for them and cast spells from the ally as they moved around. So it was like the swarm of insects that like swarmed around its teammates and stuff. So it did have a huge reliance on your teammates to actually make stuff happen probably, and the swarm would grant buffs and maybe do all kinds of stuff. It's a pretty interesting concept of being like this mass of just stuff that attaches itself quite literally to an ally. They thought that concept was super cool and was the kind of gameplay that they would also potentially like to try out again in the future on a tank or support champion instead of the swarm of insects. I'm not entirely sure how well this swarm of insects would make sense with that gameplay concept though. I mean, I guess it kind of fits with the gameplay theme in the sense that you could like go and swarm around your ally, but it seems like the type of character that might fit more in line with the insect theme is something like an agile fighter that flies all over the place and stuff, and maybe you inflict enemies with diseases or poisons while having like some sort of evasion or dodging effects to outmaneuver people. I'm pretty sure that the character of the swarm of insects and the gameplay concept of this character that attaches itself to an ally were not separate when they were originally tested, but after failing to make it work out, they separated them, and they tried testing out other variations of the swarm of insect type of champion with different gameplay kits, and they also took that gameplay kit of attaching to an ally and then tested that out with a bunch of other different character concepts. Some of them were maybe like some kind of a creature-esque champion, and others were maybe like a more sophisticated version of a shapeshifter. So although they started out as the same champion together, the swarm of insects champion and the gameplay of attaching yourself to an ally and being a shapeshifter, well, they were separated from each other, but they're both still candidates for potential new champions in development for the future. And the creature or shapeshifter concept is one that could potentially exist within the gameplay of attaching yourself to an ally, and there's a couple other versions too that you could potentially consider. One version of a shapeshifter kind of champion that I always thought was super cool was like this kind of the concept of a character who turns into a demon. So maybe something like the demon hunters in the Warcraft universe, who's like this swift ranged assassin kind of character, and then they transform into like a demon-esque dude and go all Super Saiyan and stuff and become a lot more magic based in their demon form. I guess it would be kind of like how Swain transforms, just with a human and a demon instead of a human and like this big bird thing. This idea definitely wouldn't fit in with the gameplay theme that they were going for though, with that champion. So maybe it's out of question for this concept. However, this demon shapeshifter could totally work out as a different concept. I mean, it'd still be pretty unique. I'm trying to imagine like what type of character would this be similar to. I guess it's a little similar to Swain since he's Noxian. Swain kind of pulls off like the dark and twisted personality almost to an extent. So I doubt that a traditional demon hunter trope kind of works in the League of Legends universe, but you could have something a little bit more exaggerated. The demon hunter kind of guy is a character that transforms into a demonic version of themselves. They don't really transform into a demon. It's still pretty humanoid-esque. So you could have a character that goes maybe a little bit further on that shapeshifting concept and transforms like a humanoid into something that is totally different, like a Cho'Gath or like a Rek'Sai, like just a total transformation where the two forms are completely different from one another. And for the lore, maybe you could have it be like some guy he's like possessed by a demon, or he has like a demon from the void living inside him. But once again, this concept might not fit with the gameplay design that they had, so it's kind of more of a totally different idea. Something else that might work though is maybe a type of character that's like more of a wisp kind of thing going on, like a champion who's literally an entire ball of energy who casts spells and stuff. Something a lot different to Io the Wisp in Dota 2 though. He's much more like Aurelion Sol and is kind of like a more aggressive champion. It probably wouldn't be a wisp, just like this sentient ball of pure energy flying around and doing stuff. It could attach itself to an ally to enhance them with their energy powers, and it could still cast spells at opponents and stuff. It definitely fits well thematically with the gameplay for sure, and it's an interesting and unique concept for League, definitely. I really like how some of the more recent champions with League of Legends are exploring the concepts of like this omnipotent, almost, god-like kind of entities. We saw this with Bard, with Kindred, and with Aurelion Sol too, and maybe even a couple others too, but it's something Riot is incorporating thematically into their characters quite a bit in the more recent couple of years, and maybe this type of thing could fit with like this sentient ball of energy type of character. This concept would also work great as like a support buff type of guy, or maybe you could even make it work as like a tank with defensive spells and shields and all that kind of stuff. And you could honestly incorporate the shapeshifter kind of concept as well, really fluidly too. I mean, it's not that complicated to make a sentient ball of energy kind of thing. Just transform into a bunch of different forms of balls of energy and have it make a lot of sense and still be super cool and fun. As for what you could do with the idea of the swarm of insects, honestly making it a shape-shifting swarm of insects isn't that bad of an idea. I mean, it definitely has potential. You could give it like a bunch of different forms for different purposes, like you have an aggressive form, a defensive form, a form that attaches itself to an ally, and all that kinds of stuff. But I kind of like the idea that I touched on a little bit previously of them being like this agile type of fighter character that, you inflict poisons onto your opponents. Maybe you have it use like a new resource or something. You could give it like some kind of like a controller too, like the queen insect, or I don't know, maybe even like a humanoid character. Maybe it's like a mage or a fighter champion who's a humanoid that has like this swarm of insects surrounding them and then uses the insects to cast abilities on opponents. Maybe it's spells involving magic with the insects, or maybe it's a more literal sense where he just throws or directs a group of insects to go attack an opponent. It'd be like a beekeeper kind of champion almost, just with like more exotic and fancier types of insects that might make more sense for a fantasy universe. There's certainly lots of room to work with for sure. So what do you think about the concept of a shapeshifter, as well as the concept of a swarm of insects, and as well the gameplay concept of a champion who would attach themselves to an ally and interact with them? All three of these ideas are something that could possibly actually be in development as we speak, and they all have potential to become champions in the future. Anyway, that's going to be it from me. Thanks for watching, leave a comment, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you guys next time.